This video here, I'm going to kind of do a talk around different ideas of Tai Chi. You know, maybe you could say like do's and don'ts. And there's so many different viewpoints on Tai Chi, and this group or this person does it this way, and this person does it this way, and they have the right approach and no one else does, and all of that kind of stuff like that. And yes, all of it is kind of opinion-based. Even what I'm sharing today is opinion-based. But I'm going to try to focus more on, will it work? Meaning, are the body mechanics appropriate for my body? Am I hurting myself? You know, in other words, am I going to create chronic issues from the way that I'm doing Tai Chi? Just because you're doing Tai Chi doesn't mean that you can't hurt yourself or cause, let's say, knee pain or foot pain or back pain, or exacerbate an existing condition already based on how the person is getting you to perform the mechanics. So that's really what I'm going to talk about. As it relates to, will it work? What do I mean by that? Can I use it in a self-defense situation, or could I use it potentially in a combat sports situation? We have that over here. And then on the other side, my generalized health, we'll say, I like to use the term functional fitness, right? Can I use the Tai Chi that I'm practicing in the way that I'm learning it and practicing it to improve my day-to-day walking around the store, or going to a park, or going on a trip? Can I do I feel more stable after I've done this for a few months? Are my joints better? Or do I feel stronger? Stuff like that. Real results. And if you can't really do that, and it's just something where it's theoretical, then maybe not the best. So let's get into this. So first off, some of this stuff is camps, right? We'll say like, these people do it this way, and these people do it this way, and there's a large consensus of these two different things. And I don't like to put myself in any one camp of things. Again, to me, does it work, and is it going to hurt me, or is it going to improve me, right? There can be several ways to do any given thing. And I think that it's important that we learn those things and we try to practice all of them. Reason being is because this might work well for that person, and they maybe get a bit more benefit out of it, versus that over there for that person. But we also want to see it as a progressive approach to development. If I'm always going to be here, and I can never get up here because of the training is limiting me, then that's probably not beneficial enough, my personal opinion. So let's look at this. We've got sinking and driving, and we have shifting into the knees. What do I mean by that? Again, two different camps, and on this one here, the shifting in the knees, if I share somebody to do that, it is very, very short term. Meaning they're trying to get to coordination, and they're just, they're trying to get their body to somewhat work together. And so doing things like this, shifting onto the knees, see? Just moving the knees. Look, I'm not really engaging we'll say the hip complex much at all, right? You can say the quad. I'm not really doing that much at all, right? I'm just shifting. And a lot of people, this is the core way they do their Tai Chi. Now, in doing this shifting into the knee, some people really exacerbate it. They really force into the knee like that. It creates a lot of pressure in the knee. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to damage it, but through chronic use it could, or if you already have a pre-existing condition. Also, too, it's really not developing the quadricep muscles. This muscle on the inside of the leg helps to really stabilize the knee. And if I'm not making those stronger, then I'm just going to keep the knee's not going to always necessarily feel the best. Sinking and driving is more like this, right? I really load all of the muscles, and then I drive forward and I engage them. Now, look, I'm not locking the knee joint, okay? I'm not locking the knee joint when I shift either, right? But I'm either going to be in this position, which is totally acceptable, my posture is accurate, there's nothing over my foot, or I'll drive and I'll complete myself here with a little bit more bend in the knee so my posture is more upright. See, here, or here, here, or here. So this thinking and driving is going to work the muscles so much more. The buttocks, the quadriceps, the hamstrings, the soleus, the head of the calf, even the joints, the ankle, the knee, and the hip. Of course, I'm doing this in a fixed position. That's something we'll also discuss later. So in the beginning, yeah, you're trying to get the person maybe to do some moves and you know, so they start to learn to shift on the leg. But we really want to get past that, okay? And if you're watching Tai Chi videos, think about it for a second. If I'm not really, am I doing Tai Chi for the sake to do Tai Chi, or am I doing it for a reason? Beyond just, oh, I like the way Tai Chi looks, but am I doing it for my strength and my stability, my mobility? Am I using it potentially to learn to approach to self-defense? Well, if that's the case, then shifting in the legs, or shifting and locking, stuff like this, right? And turning, shifting, like that, kind of stuff like that. It's not going to really engage the leg muscles enough, and the hip and the legs enough to really to get much of the benefit out of it. It will be the same as an example. Wall push-ups are very beneficial, especially if you're not strong enough to do push-ups on your knees or, you know, in a plank-like position. But we want to progress past this, right? So if you think of shifting, it's almost like doing something like that, right? I'm not going to really benefit a lot out of this. So anyway, I feel thinking and driving is a better approach. The length and the width of the stance are longer and narrower. Both of them have a benefit, again, in different camps, right? But so the length and the width. So if I'm in this small frame, say the width and the length are the same. We'll say a medium frame, the length and the width are the same. A large frame, the length and the width are the same. This is going to give me maximum stability. Okay? Doing things like this in a line, yes, you can do that. And in some movements, doing something in a line like this can have some benefit. But if you're trying to develop more stability and you want to get stronger, these wider stances like this are beneficial. Now, a narrower frame, right? I can do something where I'm on the same line. My feet are the width of my shoulders, right? Or the foot is here. See, you're here. Both of these, I would say, are great for a small frame. A large frame, we get here like this. Just remember, this is going to take some of the mobility out of your hip. Versus here, I'm going to be able to use my hip pretty much full range of mobility. Here, I'm limited. So then anything variation in between there. So is a narrow stance with a large frame completely bad? Of course not. But what are you trying to develop? And if somebody tells you got to be like this, right, and you feel unstable, just take out a step out at least, see, like that, or even wider, like that, see. But yeah, you should feel so much more stable. To me, doing Tai Chi for functional fitness, it's like this. I'm using a large frame to develop my legs and my core. In other words, I'm doing these long stances to make me stronger, right? And to improve my stability and my generalized body's structure. The smaller frames, whether the feet or the toes and the heels are on the same line, or if they're separated out like this, it is think of it like this, I'm utilizing that as to improve my mobility for my day-to-day walking around, okay? In other words, I'm not going to go to the grocery store and walk around like this, right? But I need to do that stuff in training and in practice to get all of this stronger, right? I want to have stronger buttocks so I can get up out of chairs and out of cars easier, right? I want to have stronger quadriceps so it's easier for me to walk upstairs, or even just to pick my foot up as I'm stepping around, walking around day to day. But that posture, or we'll say that frame, should be the width of my shoulders, right? Well, it's going to give me maximum, we'll say, stability. right? And again, having my feet on the same line, or a half, right? Or even the same length and width. All of that is doable. But you have to really take your training and do those two different pieces. I have several videos over these different aspects of different kinds of footwork and why they're important. Lumbar should be pliable. Over here we have stress points. What do I mean by that? There's a lot of people when they do their Tai Chi, they like roll the back, right? So they go to do something and then they kind of almost roll like this. They do something and they roll like that. Okay, well, in your lumbar, you're going to create like pinch points in your spine. Why would you want to do it that way? The lumbar should be like for mobility, right? It should be loose all the time. I don't want to hyperextend my elbow joint. I don't want to hyperextend my wrist, right? Or any joint in my body and cause damage. Why would I want to do that in my spine? The other part of that is a lot of people, the lumbar or the psoas muscles are weak from sitting in chairs all the time, or they're really tight. And we want to loosen that stuff up and we want to strengthen it. But if we're pinching and twisting like that when we're doing movements, we're just going to exacerbate a pre-existing condition. We don't want to do that. So I recommend when you're doing your stuff, if you see me in this position, my spine is not pinched in any way. See, it is now. And it's hard to see sometimes because a lot of these people will wear longer shirts, right? It's Hanfu clothes. They'll wear these longer shirts and it's hard to see the hip and the spine connection. But when you're doing it, always think that I've got to keep my pelvis under me in such a way, right? Even in this position here, everything is lined up. But again, if I round the back, the hip stays and the spine rolls, that's going to hurt us. Or the opposite way, like this, right? Where the spine is rolling forward and the pelvis stayed in this position. We want to keep all of that pliable and loose. If we don't, again, it's easy to strain things and hurt things. Remember, we want to loosen those things up. We want to strengthen the muscles and the connective tissue and open up those joints. Continuous movement, and then pauses and hesitations. So there's two camps on this too, right? It's a lot of this stuff is. The continuous movement is important because it helps me to develop and to handle my momentum of my own personal self. And if I was using it for application, it kind of helps me to do that also. The pauses and hesitations, if I'm doing something and I'm having to hold something in a spot, you have to ask yourself, why are they doing that? If there's no energy, being presented. Is it just to pose, to have a look? I've seen teachers where they pause and then just the hands are doing some weird movement and then they do a move. There's no need to add extra movements or to hold positions while you're applying reforms. And especially adding extra movements. I mean, what I mean by extra movements is something that has no bearing, right? It's not an application piece. It's not helping with the actual posture itself. It's just a decoration that someone added. There's no reason to do that. It's difficult enough to learn Tai Chi in a right way. I'm talking about not just in a follow-along class, but you're actually learning it, you're trying to develop it, you're trying to develop a home practice. You don't need a bunch of extra stuff like that. There's already enough of things to develop Tai Chi and make it much more complex. Just a single form, that's very basic, and that's what a lot of people teach, but most people that do Tai Chi, there's a whole lot of content that really goes along with it to truly flesh the whole thing out. But again, like I said, I don't want to hold something, right? Now, at the same time though, let's say I do this movement and right before it loses all of its energy, That's when I want to do that next movement. That's difficult to do, right? Like I do this, and right before it stops, I go to do this other thing, right? That's really what we're striving for. So when you do pauses and hesitations, right, it is really like a glitch, and we want to remove that, in my personal opinion, right? In other words, I do this move, and I'm here, and then I kind of pause for a second, and then I go to do something, right? You know, whatever it is. And we want to take that out, right? We want to be able to just move into this next movement without being frozen. But sometimes when we're doing certain routines or things in a certain way, it's hard to connect it sometimes, and that creates pauses and hesitations. That's okay as long as we see that and we want to, again, take it from a progressive approach. We want to get rid of that pause and that hesitation. We want our timing to improve for all of the movements and how we're generalizing flowing through this content. So if that kind of makes sense. Let's see, creative visualization. Okay, creative visualization is important, okay, but there's also intention. So again, two camps. So on the one side, well, everybody talks about intention, but that intention, to me, in a lot of ways, is more like creative visualization on the one side. Intention on one side is that this is a strike, and I know it's a strike, and my mind, I'm expressing it as a strike, and my subconscious is going to get my body to shore itself up and use it in a way that it is a strike, right? Strike. I'm not having to tell my body that it's a strike. I now have to tell this muscle and this group and this connective tissue to contract and this to relax to make that happen. It's going to happen, okay? So, but if I don't have the intention that it's a strike or a push or a pull or a grab, then that's going to make it to where I'm going to lack that mind-body connection. And so it's very important. It doesn't matter if you're 20-something and you're doing Tai Chi or you're 80-something and you're doing Tai Chi. You want to know what the movement's doing. You don't have to know 5 variations of that posture, but it's at least knowing one way to do it will give you that mind intention, and you'll get more of that connection, mind and the body together. On the other side of creative visualization, I don't really like to, creative visualization is really great. It's a great way to role play out in your mind different scenarios and things like that. Now you don't want to ruminate, sit there for hours and contemplate these things that you're just guessing at. But it's great to be able to at least role play out some basic ideas and see if you can come up with some reasons why it wouldn't work or ways to improve it. But when you're using creative visualization to move energy in your body, then maybe that's a little bit, in my opinion, off base. Meaning, if you, let's see, I can express this to you. So I'm going to transfer energy out of my hand, right? But in my mind, I'm telling my body to move the chi through my body and, exert force out through my hand, right? I don't really think that your body can really connect in that way. It doesn't have anything to go by. Your mind, over a period of time, it's learned what the word and what the action is to push, or to pull, right? Or to lift, or to punch, or to kick. It's never learned what it is to move energy through your body like highways. It hasn't learned to do that. And there's no way for you to, my personal opinion, there's no way for you to validate that. Is it true that energy travels through our body? Of course it is. One of the big things that I discussed is kinetic energy being transferred through the body, right? force to get reaction force, right? That kinetic chain, that is true energy. We can feel it, we can see it, and all of that. But the other way is a bit much. And if my personal opinion, stay away from that stuff. Develop what you can see and what you can feel and what you know, and use Tai Chi as a vehicle to do it. Let's see here. Elbows down, so they don't affect the shoulders. What I mean by that, it's like you'll see people and the arms way up here, or say like I don't know, way against that cause, and maybe their elbows are like this. Okay, well, once the elbow gets up to a certain point, it loses the connection to, we'll say, to the hip, and it's only connected to the shoulder girdle. So that any force, pulling, pushing type actions, torque actions, whatever you might be doing with your arms, the shoulder girdle is trying to support that, but then the core now has to support the shoulder girdle instead of working together in a unit, right? If I keep my elbow down, then I can connect to the hip and to the shoulder girdle and all the way down into the front. The higher I get this, or the more odd the angle is, the more I'm just in the shoulder girdle, and I'm no longer directly connected to the hip and or to the legs, the feet, right? It's like throwing a punch, and you punch up here, right? It's really hard to be connected here, but if the elbow is down, I can connect from the foot, the hip, and the shoulder, and all the way out. So everything is connected. So I can actually really generate that force, that everybody's talking about, 5G, issuing force throughout the body. Well, I have to have proper body mechanics to do that. I just can't. It's not just, again, it's not something that you can dream up or theorize and it's just going to come out. It doesn't work that way. The body has to work together in a unified way to execute those things. There's movements like this in Wing Chun that I do, right? But look, the elbow, in theory, is down. But when people do the Wing Chun bong style like that, it's no longer connected. And in any forces applied into this, if you can't change it right away, it's going to go into the deltoid. All this additional force is going to go into the clavicle and the acromion, hurt the bursa sac, and again, cause strain up here. This is fighting. This is trying to support this. It's no longer connected. It's really here, like that. Now everything can be connected. Any force that's applied into this, I can keep this relaxed. I'm going to go down into my feet. It's not for punches up here in your face. That's what these movements are for, as an example. So, again, my opinion. But try it for yourself and see, put this hand up here like this, and the same thing with fundamental Tai Chi moves, right? You get the arm up here in some kind of weird fashion, and you go, well, it looks good or whatever, you're doing something like that, and it's up here. Well, it needs to be down here, right? If I do it up here, it's going to cause all this tension in my deltoid and in my rotator cuff, my shoulder in general, and I'm not going to really be able to transfer it down. So it's not really a good body connection. We talked about the body and the breath unity, right? And the reason behind that. We talked about the mind, right? But the breath is another aspect. I guess we'll put it like that. So the breathing, you can tell people in the beginning, I tell people just breathe naturally. Sometimes it's a little bit much. They're trying to think about movements and how they work and all of that. But just in a generalized way, if something is coming toward me, I want to be able to breathe in, and then I want to be able to exhale away, right, as an example. Something like 12 to 20 breaths a minute is what the average person is able to do. And if, in the beginning, again, it's hard. And sometimes people they've learned the form, or they kind of can do it, they don't want to forget it, they want to try to get through